Hey everyone, thanks for your support in 2024. We have a lot of cool stuff coming in 2025, and here are some of the things you can look forward to as we move into next year. In the lead up to The Mandalorian and Grogu in 2026, we'll be starting a full series rewatch of both The Mandalorian and The Book of Boba Fett on exploring hyperspace lanes beginning in October. You can also expect a rewatch of Andor, and we will have reviews of every episode of Andor and the rest of the Skeleton Crew as those come out. Josie will be returning as we continue to rank every Star Wars thing released ever. Reviews of every episode of every Marvel Disney Plus show, including Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, The Eyes of Wakanda, Wonder Man, Ironheart, Daredevil Born Again, and Marvel Zombies, the day after each episode releases, will be available on Beware of Spoilers. We'll be having special event podcasts on 30-minute reviews for the Academy Awards, our 2024 year in review in early January, ranking all of Phase 5 of the MCU after Fantastic Four First Steps comes out, and our 10th anniversary special. Once we complete our rankings of all the Pokemon games on the backlog files, we'll be moving on to Kingdom Hearts and Final Fantasy. Over on the YouTube channel, you can join in for playthroughs of Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga, Pokemon White, Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Blue Rescue Team, Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories, Kingdom Hearts Recoded, Mario Golf Toadstool Tour, Sonic Adventure 2, LEGO Racers 2, LEGO Star Wars The Complete Saga, and SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom. Want to keep on top of all the new things we have coming? Subscribe at mwpnews.com, subscribe on YouTube at youtube.com/@mwpnews, or subscribe to Beware of Spoilers, 30-minute reviews, exploring hyperspace lanes, and the backlog files on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. Again, thank you for your support. Good morning, and welcome to, well, it's evening by the time this goes up, and welcome to Exploring Hyperspace Lanes. I am Adam. Now, I know we said we were going to talk about Andor, and we were going to talk about Andor Episode 5. We're going to push that to next week, because yesterday we got some news, and I feel we need to talk about this. Especially considering what Josie and I spoke about at length on... what Josie and I spoke about at length last week, or on Wednesday. We talked about the news report that Kathleen Kennedy, the head of Lucasfilm, was scheduled to depart, as per reports. She was going to be departing the studio at some point before the end of this year. That appears to be false, that story. It appears that what happened was one of the newsletters that runs with the Hollywood Reporter, one of those insiders ran that in their newsletter, and then when they ran the newsletter, it turned out to not entirely be true. Kathleen Kennedy herself issued a statement to, or did an interview, I think, with Variety, where she basically said, and I appreciate this about her a little bit, this idea that, I will leave Lucasfilm in a body bag. It's kind of what the statement summed up as. She said, I have no intention of leaving Lucasfilm right now. I have, at the end of my current contract, or at the end of this year, I may evaluate retiring. I'm 72 years old. But making movies is in my blood. I'm not going to retire from that ever permanently, and I'll likely stay on consulting and continue to consult with Lucasfilm, even after I retire. Because and keep in mind, when we talk about Kathleen Kennedy, she's not just the studio head of Lucasfilm. That's one of the big disconnects, I think, here, is that it's she's not just the head of Lucasfilm. Kathleen Kennedy she worked with Spielberg for a good amount of time. She was behind Jurassic Park. She was behind E.T. She was behind Back to the Future. Her name's all over these classic movies from the 80s. And there's a reason why Lucas handpicked her to take over Lucasfilm. Now, I wanted to issue the correction because we did say she was leaving, and it appears she's not leaving. I think a lot of my assessment stands, though. a lot of the assessment that I gave about Lucasfilm in general doesn't feel inaccurate, considering the second part of the story. We've talked a lot about how Disney is in a place that is kind of unique, especially when you compare it to Warner Brothers, which I'll use Warner Brothers because they also have the major, they also have a major superhero franchise. Like, they have DC, and DC seems to be going pretty well so far. We'll see what happens as the movies start to come out. But based on Gunn's conversation, the DC movie side of things, the video game side of things is a complete clusterfuck right now. Let's not mince words. But the movie side of things seems to be going well. The point I'm trying to make in all of this is they have yet to get to the point where they're announcing shit for the sake of announcing shit. And I think that is kind of where that's kind of where my issue with Disney and Lucasfilm kind of comes up. Because we are now 2 years removed, almost 2 years, 1 year and 10 months removed from the big panel at Star Wars Celebration, where they talked about the 3 new movies. They talked about Filoni directing a new Jedi Order movie. They talked about... he's doing Dawn of the Jedi. Oh, no. He's doing Heir to the Empire. Filoni's doing Heir to the Empire. Charmin Obaid-Chinoy is doing a new Jedi Order movie, and James Mangold is doing a Dawn of the Jedi movie. That announcement was... at this point, years ago. 2 years ago, almost. And we've had no movement on those. We've had writers fired, because I believe that after this, Damien Lindelof was fired from... Damien Lindelof, I believe, was fired after we had the conversation, or after the announcement of the movie coming out, and we knew he was working on it. But that's as much as we've gotten. That's all we've gotten from this. We've gotten nothing else. And the question is, what's going on here? Why haven't we heard anything? And we got the announcement that a movie was in production, and they were shooting it, and it's coming out in May of 2026. And that movie is still coming out in May of 2026. That's The Mandalorian and Grogu. But what about the rest? These other 3 movies. What's the next thing they're going to start production on? Because they still have one more reserved date, and that is December 2027. What is going to go on that date? And we have an answer now. The answer is Sean Levy, who you may remember from Deadpool and Wolverine. Sean Levy, who you may remember from Free Guy. From, what was that other movie? The Adam Project on Netflix. That Sean Levy is directing a movie for Lucasfilm. Weird, right? That's not any of the 3 movies that were previously announced. That's the thing that kind of epitomizes Kathleen Kennedy, the issues with Kathleen Kennedy's reign at Lucasfilm. Not reign. Reign sounds like I'm talking about a king or something. Her time as studio head is kind of defined by, we're working on this project. We're announcing projects we're working on. Some of them may come out. Some of them may not come out. But we're going to announce them all anyway. And that's it. We're just going to announce that these projects are happening. If they happen, they happen. If they don't, oh well. And I don't think that's necessarily the best plan for a situation like this, if I'm being completely honest. I don't think the way to run a studio is to announce every single project that you have someone exploring the possibility of telling a story in. I don't think it's a good idea to be out there and be like, okay, we're making a Lando show. Okay, you're making a Lando show, great. You're going to make a Lando show, and when is this coming? When are we going to see this Lando show? And apparently the answer is never, because apparently it's a movie now, and apparently that's also still in development, but that's not the next one coming. The next one coming is Sean Levy, telling this story 5 to 6 years after Rise of Skywalker, but not the new Jedi Order movie that was being worked on by what's her name? By Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy, with Daisy Ridley returning. There may be some characters who come in from the sequel trilogy, but they don't know that yet. And to which my next question is, if you're developing this movie, and this movie is going to be the next project, if this movie is going to be the next project that's being developed by Lucasfilm, how do you not know who the cast is going to be? How do you not, I'm sorry, saying it's the next project that's going to be developed is incorrect. It's not the next project that's going to be developed. It's in development. It's been in development for a while now. I remember they announced that they were working with Sean Levy on something, after they announced they were working with Taika Waititi on something, after they announced they were working with Benioff and Weiss on something, after they announced they were working with, what's his name on something? Who's the other guy? This is where I need to be, right? Yes, this is where I need to be, I think. Wisconsin Highway. Yes, I'm in the right place now. Or maybe not. Either way, we'll figure it out. After they announced all of these people, they were like, okay, well, we're doing X, Y, and Z now. We're going to be doing, here are the movies we're going to be working on. Okay, great. Work on all these movies. None of them come out. So far, of these movies that have been announced, that have been designed with, okay, we have a director in mind, and we have a director that we are clearly working with here. We have gotten one of them entering production. One. There was a trilogy of Rian Johnson movies. That's not happening. There was the trilogy of, and let's include Josh Trank, even though there was an extenuating circumstance on the Josh Trank thing. Let's include the Josh Trank thing. Josh Trank was working on the Boba Fett movie. That didn't happen. I think James Mangold was working on the Obi-Wan movie. James Mangold was working on something for Star Wars before New Jedi Order. I don't remember specifically what it was, but he was definitely working on something. I don't specifically remember what. Again, he was, though. He definitely was working on something. He was working on that. That never materialized. Josh Trank's Boba Fett movie, granted, it was canceled when Fantastic Four bombed. That said, the movie never came out. The movie still never came out. That was canceled. Benioff and Weiss, they were working on a trilogy. I don't think they ever announced what that trilogy was going to be. That movie, those 3 movies, were presumably canceled, again, after the bombing of the end of, what was that show? Game of Thrones. Who else was there? There was definitely more. Hang on. Rian Johnson. Rian Johnson had a trilogy of movies. Again, no movement on that. No movement on Rian Johnson and his trilogy of movies. No movement on, what's it called? No movement on, what was the next one after that? I'm forgetting. Rian Johnson. Then after Rian Johnson, there was... Who was after that? Who was after Rian Johnson? Kevin Feige had a movie. No movement on the Kevin Feige movie. No movement on the Taika Waititi movie. The Sean Levy movie is the one that's moving forward. So Sean Levy's next movie is going to be Star Wars, presumably. Oh, no movement on the Patty Jenkins movie. You keep announcing that you're partnering with this great talent, and then you don't make the movies. What's the fucking point of announcing that you're working with all these great talent? Who's winning here? Not the audience. I know that for damn sure. The audience isn't the one winning in this. The audience is just sitting here so when can I see a movie? When am I going to be able to go to a theater and see, what's it called? When am I going to be able to go to a theater and see whatever the next Star Wars movie is? That's the answer I want. And who's going to be directing it, and what's it going to be about? That we don't have an answer for any of that, because it's not going to... They have no intention of actually answering that question, I don't think. Because why should they? Why should they answer that question? What incentive do they have to give us an answer to that question? It sounds like I'm being obtuse or stupid, but realistically, what reason do they have to answer that question? At the end of the day, all they have to do is just, eventually put out a movie and people will go and see it. But the issue is the constant announcing of shit that never happens is not good. The constant announcing of shit that never happens doesn't put you in a situation where you seem like you know what you're doing. The constant announcing of shit that doesn't end up happening just looks like you're dysfunctional. And if you look dysfunctional, people aren't going to be as interested. Considering the current news ecosystem we live in for entertainment stories, if you look incompetent, then it's just gonna be like, well, why am I gonna see the movie if the behind the scenes of the movie doesn't track that this is gonna be something good? Why am I bothering to see the movie? What's the point of this? And that is kind of fundamentally what the big issue that I have with this approach of let's announce shit. Let's announce that we're working on this because someone will like it. Someone will be interested in seeing that we're working on this. Oh, good. The shareholders will like it. It'll be good for the shareholders to see that Lucasfilm is doing something. The idea that it's okay, so the next movie that's entering production is going to be that. Okay, fine. Okay, well, let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. That's how I feel about this. Wait and see. And to that end, if we're going to sit here and wait and see, well, how long are we going to be sitting here waiting until we see something? Because, okay, the movie is, The movie is entering production. It's the next movie to enter production. It'll be entering production in 2020, probably for release in 2027. So I would assume probably late this year. So it could shoot now in 2026 and then be done for 2027. That would be my assumption. But I can't say that for certain. I can't say that for certain at all. Let me go this way. If that's going to be the case, and we're looking at that as the situation that we're dealing with here, then what are we doing? What is any of this that we're doing? And I don't think there's a good answer for any of it. I think this is where I need to be. Yes, this is where I need to be. Sorry, the railroad crossing by where I work is off, so I'm trying to figure out where the fuck I am. But long story short, I think that the thing that needs to be kind of, when we look at the current state of Lucasfilm, and this is something that we addressed quite a few times on this show, the current state of Lucasfilm as a studio, the thing that needs to be dealt with in this regard is that Lucasfilm as a studio is profoundly dysfunctional. And I don't know what the dysfunction comes from, if I'm being honest. I don't know if the dysfunction is they are paralyzed by indecision. They're paralyzed by, this next thing we do has to be really good, so we don't want to fuck it up. So while we're trying not to fuck it up, let's just not do anything. There's a distinct possibility that's part of it. And if that is what they're dealing with, and they are kind of, afraid of, oh, well, we don't want to just release something that will be bad, if that's the case, then at a certain point, lower the amount you're gambling. Because, if the issue is, oh, well, we don't want to make a $250 million bet, well, don't make a $250 million bet. Make a $100 million bet. Make a $50 million bet. You'll make your budget back easier. You can do a Star Wars movie on the cheap. You can. It's possible. They just don't want to. So, as we look at this news story, that the next movie after the Mandalorian and Grogu is going to be the Shane Levy movie, until we see footage, I don't believe it. I don't. Until I am sitting in the theater watching footage from this movie, or I'm sitting on YouTube, and they have a video from set saying, hey, look, we're shooting it. I don't believe it. Because, again, there might be characters returning. There might be characters returning from the original trilogy, or from the sequel trilogy. There might be. You don't know. This is the next movie being shot. This is the next movie being shot. And you don't know who's in the cast. That's a problem. That is a profound problem. And is indicative, unfortunately, of what we've seen at Lucasfilm over the last 12 years, 13 years since Disney bought them. It is a profound issue that they need to address. They need to address the almost comedic levels of dysfunction that are plaguing this studio. Because if they don't address that, then what are we doing here? Like, literally, people pick up on the dysfunction. And then it'll show through in the product. And then the issue is, it's like, is Sean Levy writing the movie? Or is it Shane Levy? I think it's either way. Like, is he writing the movie? Or is it someone else writing the movie? Who is the lead of this movie? Like, you tell us the era it takes place in, great. That tells me nothing. And what it tells me is, like, is this meant to be, like, the introduction to things? Like, are we introducing elements that are going to be important going into New Jedi Order? Like, is that what this is? Is this just a random movie that's just going to be like, oh, we're going to go on a nice little flight of fancy here? I mean, I'm fine with either. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying one is necessarily inherently better than the other. And I'm not saying that, like, I very much would like to see one over the other. Like, just give me a good Star Wars movie. I don't trust that they're going to do that, though. That's kind of my issue. I don't trust that this is going to be great, considering it's the next one entering production, and we do not know the cast. I mean, you could just be playing coy. And just be like, I don't want to announce, that. But, like, what better way is there to recommand the news cycle than being like, oh yeah, we're the next movie we're doing is his movie that he's been talking about for a few months, or not a few months, he's been talking about it for a while. But his movie is going to be next, and in that movie, it's going to be in the post sequel era, and this character will be appearing. Poe Dameron's appearing. Finn's appearing. Like, whatever the fuck Billy Lord's character's name is appearing. Like, someone is appearing. Rose is. I don't give a shit. Give me something to be like, oh, okay, cool. Someone is coming. There's someone here who's being worked on. Oh, we have a Force ghost of Luke showing up. All right, cool. Like, you're announcing them again, and this is another thing that Disney has been doing lately, is announcing movies before contracts are signed, because that happened with Moana 2 last year, where they announced Moana 2, and then, like, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and, like, Auli Carvalho were both like, oh, we're doing Moana 2? Cool. Would have been nice to know that, or to have a contract signed. Like, it's bizarre. Like, why are you announcing things before you have all the T's crossed and the I's dotted? It's a weird, it's a bizarre situation, and it's kind of been indicative of what's gone on with Lucasfilm for the last decade. Hopefully, we get to a point now where we don't have to keep dealing with this, and like, unfortunately, I don't know, and this is something that I've said before. I don't know if this recurring problem is a Kathleen Kennedy issue or a Bob Iger issue, or really a Disney corporate issue, because, like, it didn't, like, the issue continued into Chapek's brief reign. This idea of we're announcing projects but not giving specifics on it. Like, Rogue Squadron was announced, and Patty Jenkins was announced to be directing it, but nothing ever materialized from it. It actually got canceled, but like no real reason was given why besides creative differences. Which, I said it when the project got canceled, the idea that Patty Jenkins had creative differences with Lucasfilm is not shocking, considering she left Thor: The Dark World over creative differences with Marvel. Like, she has the story she wants to tell, and she's an auteur. She wants to tell the story she wants to tell. Like, in the same way that, like, we blame the studio when someone like Nolan, if Nolan were to depart a project, be like, oh, well, the studio shouldn't have fucked with Nolan. The studio shouldn't have fucked with Patty Jenkins. You brought Patty Jenkins on, so do that. And I know what this was. I can tell you what happened, because we've seen this movie happen before. Lucasfilm started pre-production with this person. Then they ended up in the situation where a movie came out that wasn't well received. They signed her before Wonder Woman 1984. Wonder Woman 1984 comes out, bombs. Not theatrically, but it wasn't well received by audiences or critics. And it's in, it was a dud. So Lucasfilm clamps down and it's like, well, if you're gonna make this movie with us, you got to do X, Y, and Z. She said cordially, "Go suck my dick," and left. And it's like, this is one of those things that I think is kind of the issue that Lucasfilm has. They like to assert control in situations where a person has a flop or has a poorly received movie. Because it's what happened with Trevorrow, and Trevorrow got fired. I don't know if that's what went into the Lord and Miller situation, but Lord and Miller ended up getting fired because of Lucasfilm's overreach. Who was the other one that got fired? There was another big one that got fired. It's like, well, why are we bothering? Like, if you're someone who has a vision, like, that's why I think Sean Levy is probably a good choice for this, because I think Sean Levy knows how to work within a system. And to an extent, I'm talking about like it's football, but it's like he's a good system quarterback. And I think to an extent that's probably why it's a strong choice to have him direct the movie. He knows how to work within those, guidelines. I don't think that exists for, a lot of these other auteurs who are like, I want to tell the story I want to tell. And if you don't want me to tell that story the way I want to tell it, go fuck yourself. Find someone who will do it your way. Oh well. It is what it is. We'll wrap up there for today, though. But the important takeaway from this is Patty Jenkins is not Patty Jenkins. What's her name? Not Olivia Newton-John. I don't know why I went to Kathleen Kennedy. Is not leaving Lucasfilm at the end of this year. She's still producing multiple movies and will continue to consult after. But the announcement that she could be leaving is part of a wider issue. Part of the announcement that she's not leaving, is part of a wider issue. And we'll wrap up there for today. Until our next episode, have a great rest of your week.